Hey, I'm Tom.
And I'm John.
And we're the co-founders of Helen Musselwhite Illustration Agency.
In this series, we'll be sitting down and talking to our illustrators, finding out more about them, their artistic process, and the creative industry we work in.
Welcome to our podcast.
Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, it's quite unusual for us to do a podcast on a Monday morning.
I know. I feel like I have to turn my brain on and make sure it's working.
Got some good Monday energy, but we kind of we're in our office today, and we are doing a podcast because we've got a very special guest who has come down from Manchester and happens to be in London and was here for the weekend. So we decided to get up early, drink some coffee, and get in the office.
Hooray!
And here we are. Today's guest is, I would say, handsome Frank royalty.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
And I think somebody we've worked with for getting on for 15 years, I think.
Yeah, ages.
So a long old time, but she is very much a master of what she does, and I think has probably worked on some of our most intricate and complex projects we've ever done. So she's part illustrator, part model maker, part engineer, sometimes photographer. It's Helen Musselwhite.
Morning.
Morning,
Hello.
Helen. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
How was that for an introduction?
That was, I'm going red.
Oh,
a bit
wow.
embarrassed, but it was lovely, thank you.
That's good.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm on my third coffee, so...
Good. And you've been in London this weekend?
Yeah, we've been to a 60th stroke retirement party.
Okay. Doing a bit of dancing?
Doing a bit of dancing and a lot of chatting, and it was really
Hangover?
nice. No, actually.
That's good.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
But no, it was really good fun. So it's nice to, start the week.
Well, it's
with
nice
you.
to have you here, and because obviously you're normally in Manchester.
Yes.
We did see you recently. We saw you at our
the
Christmas
Christmas party, yeah.
So we've had a catch up, but I don't know why we've never done a podcast with you.
Well, I think I've resisted it a little bit.
Is this why we find out why we've never done it?
I know. I've definitely asked you.
Yeah,
I
you
would say
have.
on 5 occasions.
Yeah, you
How long
have.
have we been doing these? 3 years?
I think a bit longer now, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Maybe,
But then I thought I might have blown it because I said no so many times that you didn't want to ask me anymore.
And then I asked you this time, and I fully expected a no.
Yeah,
and then you were like, yeah, sure, and I'm like, okay.
And then I went, and you said to me, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
So that's going through my brain.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's good.
Another. What did we called our podcast interviewees victims on a previous podcast? But I think that's a bit harsh. Well, look, I've got lots of things I want to talk to you about. I think we should explain your work a bit before we start.
Yeah.
Because you are different to a lot of the artists we work with, because you work with paper.
Yeah.
And you create models that are then photographed.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your work.
Well, I suppose it's very analogue. I'm probably your most analogue, aren't I?
I would say so. Yeah.
So it starts off analogue, but the delivery has to be digital.
Although we have done some physical stuff.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
have done some physical stuff as well. But yeah, it's a process. Well, it's several processes, really.
So for anyone that doesn't know your work, obviously you should go and check it out. It's Helen Musselwhite. Go and have a look at her profile. But how would you describe it?
Well, it's, like you say, it's made of paper. It's multi-layered, very, very detailed. And it's often sort of inspired by the natural world as well. That tends to be what I do get commissioned for. But, I know that occasionally I get to do people and things like that, which is a little bit out of my comfort zone. But it works out in the end.
But you build a physical...
Yeah, I build a physical model. So
Absolutely.
sometimes it's layers that are all stuck together. So if you photograph it, I'd photograph it like, a piece of artwork on a wall. So I could hang it on the wall to take a photograph and it wouldn't fall apart because it's all the layers are glued together. But sometimes I make again, layers, but it's like little theatre sets. So I can mess around with the distance between the layers and the foreshortening, and essentially it's creating little worlds.
Yeah.
What I love when clients get in touch to work with you is it's kind of there's a part of an education process with the client to sort of explain, yes, it is actually made out of paper. No, it's not CGI. And how it's made, the process of it being photographed, and kind of taking into consideration their needs as well.
Yeah.
But I have to say, with having worked with so many other illustrators who are all digital, it's so nice and refreshing to have someone that makes actual physical things. It's just such a different process. It's really nice.
And it's a sort of like a full-on, totally sort of like immersive process.
Yeah.
I do find myself, completely.
Lost in it.
Yeah, and I kind of quite like that because, like I said before, I do like the process, and I like that kind of. It's almost like meditative, really. I suppose you get into it and really get into the nitty gritty and the minutiae of it.
And the scale of these pieces varies a lot as well. We've done some small. I mean I was thinking, so the Royal Mail stamps, obviously, in terms of printed, I'd say is the smallest.
But it was actually, the artwork was probably A3 size.
Yeah. And then up to big projects where we've done window displays and all sorts.
Yeah, and the T2, the big, like the
giant strawberry.
Yeah, and teapot and cup. And see, I like tiny, but I also quite like the large things
scale
as well.
That's
but it's
good.
kind of like, tiny sometimes can be as hard as large, actually.
Yeah.
Because
Different challenges.
fiddly.
So
but
how-
then large, though, you have to make sure that it, especially for something like a window display, it was there for a few months, so you've got to make sure that it doesn't fall to bits, basically.
Yeah. And where did this start? Where did the I'll call it an obsession with paper? Where did that come about?
Well, years ago, I worked for a friend who had a jewellery shop in Oxford, and she asked me if I'd make a window display. But it needed to be quite cost effective, and she had lots of sheets of tracing paper. It was a Christmas window, and so I made an angel to go in the window out of tracing paper, and I really enjoyed it. And I'd done a little bit of jewellery making with her as well, so it was sort of like the combination of like the tracing paper, and then the jewellery was quite fundamentally, it was quite basic, but it still was cutting out shapes and soldering them together. So I kind of melded those two together. And again, because paper was, it's relatively easy to get hold of, and you can go straight into it. You don't need to learn, you just get a scalpel and some scissors and just experiment. And I think it was just, it opened my eyes and it opened a few doors. I'm like, wow, the possibilities are a bit endless, and it just went from there.
Once you'd done that, did that kind of lead to more commissions?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I started just doing, my own stuff, and we were living in a little Oxfordshire town called Chipping Norton then, and there was a really lovely shop, like a...
This is in the Cotswolds, right?
Cotswolds, yeah. And it was, it's Dalesford. It was when Dalesford had just started before they got enormous and took over the country. And they had like a very small little farm shop, and they had a little gift area. And it was all beautifully curated. And I made some all white small pieces of layered artwork that were made basically natural scenes, and I took them to them and said, I make these, would you like to sell them?
That's interesting, yeah. So you weren't asked to do it?
No, I just did it.
You did it off your own back and took it to them?
And they said yes, and then they asked me to do a Christmas display for them, and that's basically how it started.
So, are you an illustrator?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I also think that I studied graphic design.
Yeah.
So I've obviously
let's go back to the start.
Yeah. So I went to art school, and I studied graphic design, but it was in the days before computers. There was one computer in a room, like this massive computer in the middle of a room, and you had to book to go on it.
Because I know you love computers.
Oh, My fear of them started there.
Yeah.
And
And where were you at? Where was art
I
school?
went to Swindon School of Art.
Swindon School of Art.
Yeah.
Okay. Which still exists, or has it been renamed?
Yeah,
or is
it still exists. I think the building has moved. It's probably amalgamated with something else. But so yeah, there was this room and the room was always locked, so you couldn't just go in there. And it's like you had to turn it on like an hour before probably to get it like sparked up.
It warmed up.
And just because I never seemed to get a chance to have a go on it, so I just thought, I'm not interested in that. And when I got my first job, computers still weren't used. We had like a thing called a PMT machine, which is photomechanical transfer. So you made I think it was called a bromide of artwork, like Letraset type, and then you set it, and then you made this. You went to the PMT machine, and it sort of took a
like
photograph.
Carbon copy paper?
No, it's like a PMT machine. It's like a enlarger,
Okay.
like if you're doing photography. But
Like a
it
projector?
takes you put the stuff under, you put whatever
I see, yeah.
and you take a photograph of it, and then that photograph would go to
And
the
what was your
printers.
What was your first job?
I was graphic designer,
Okay.
but they kind of realised that typography wasn't my key skill either, so they gave me lots of illustration work to do. So I sort of carved a little area for myself in that company, but then. That was in the very late 80s, and then the first sort of crash happened, and because I was last in to the company, I was first out.
Yeah.
But then they gave me my job back on a freelance basis, but it meant the next year when Apples came in, they didn't train me because I was a freelancer.
Right.
And so I never learned how to do it. I slipped through the net, and I couldn't afford to do it myself because it was really expensive. So that's where my fear of computers started.
Okay.
But also, what's really nice about that is, obviously you had a few opportunities there that were missed, but that pushed you down a very analog route, which you might not have done if not.
And I think that from an early age, I just always loved colouring in, and I think my exercise books at school they were highly illustrated, basically, looking back at it now, and I was really into felt tip pens and just like the colour, and I like to make things, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you like that tactile nature of having something physical at the end of the process?
I like the creation of, like with paper. You've got like several sheets of paper, and it's like magic that you can make something 3D, three-dimensional.
And you have the studio at home that is just full
of stuff.
All the stuff you've made.
Loads of paper.
Which makes a great backdrop for when we're doing Zoom calls.
Yes, it does. Yeah, no, that's true.
And we've had quite a few people come and film it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think, oh, do I need to just clear all the shelves? Because it's probably really dusty. But I think there's years where there's layers of work where I've just, if I've got something that's left over or like a little trial piece, I just put it on the shelf, and it's just built up over 15 years.
Is it kind of catalogued in your brain? You know what's where, and
sort of. Yeah, sometimes I come across things like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that, and it's funny. I was looking at the stories this morning, and you put a few things up about. Me doing this podcast, and the butterfly.
Yes.
I'd completely forgotten that I'd done that.
There's I looked at those as well, and it just kind of jogs all those memories of projects
definitely.
And deadlines and all
Yeah,
sorts.
and obviously there are some projects that you really love, and there are others that you forget, and sometimes some are completely immersive. It's like when I did Molten Brown, I lived and breathed the Molten Brown.
So that was let's talk through a few projects.
Yeah.
Molten Brown was a Christmas campaign.
Yeah. So how many years?
I would say it 5-6 years ago. Yeah, and that was a big photo shoot in London.
Yeah.
And they were doing other parts of their campaign at the same time. And I think the kind of difference with that one is that they wanted you there kind of on set the whole time, and you were making things on set.
Well,
as
I went
right?
for the first one,
Yeah,
and but the turnaround was so tight.
it was a machine.
It was an absolute, I think I did 10 or 12 different sets.
Yeah, but to give context, quite often you will make something and then pretty much box it up and just post it to the client.
Literally, I would literally make it, box it up, and then at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, a courier would come and collect it, and it would be in London by 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
and
I think
they'd set it up.
You're more reliant on the postage system and couriers than anyone on our books.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which sometimes is quite terrifying.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I have to also think about if I am sending things. With a courier, that was door to door, and they were really, really good, and they got to know what I was doing. So, they strap it in the back of the van, and it was
There's
precious cargo.
Good couriers and bad couriers.
Yeah, and they were really local to me as well. So
We should give them
I can't even.
can't remember the names.
No.
Well, I know we got an
bad.
account with them, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. What were they
I got
called?
to know him quite well.
I'm really sorry to them.
We'll put a note on the...
Yeah.
But they
Shout
were
out.
so good. But then when I send things, like post office or many other couriers are available. I always feel like a mother handing over their child for
Precious cargo.
Yeah, because I also have to think about how I pack it and how the person at the other end even takes it out of the packaging so they don't damage it. So that quite often there's a lot of thought goes into the packaging so it doesn't move around. So that's another...
You have a lot, I think it's fair to say, you have a lot more to think about than some of our artists. you know.
Sometimes I think if I did it digitally, I could go anywhere. I could
this is
take
what I was
my
about to
laptop
say.
and just...
Is that I think it's great that clients are happy and willing to go that extra mile. They could do it in CGI, but they don't, and they go to that extra effort of actually making it. And yes, that does come with additional kind of headaches, but it's this lovely end result. That
I think so. And I think that I also get commissioned because of that as well. I'm more difficult to commission in a way. And I've heard art directors, they've told me that they've wanted to commission me for a long time, but it takes the right project.
Yeah, I always have described you as a kind of a problem solver, because I think I've seen briefs in the past where a creative director or an ad agency has come to us and said, we've got this idea, we know what it's going to look like, but we can't work out how to do it, and we want to make something out of paper. The one that always comes to mind is the Audi campaign, which was, it must have been a good 10 years ago.
I think that's the first time I ever met you, Tom, on the set of that.
On South Bank.
Yeah.
And
that studio was...
Yeah, it's great.
The guy lived upstairs.
Yeah, it was like live work.
Yeah, that was lovely.
Yeah.
But that was a series of cityscapes that were essentially paper-built cityscapes coming out of a map.
Yeah.
That they then subsequently, I think they CGI'd an Audi car onto. But you built the whole thing. And I remember them calling and saying, we need it to freely stand, and we think it's going to have to be, a couple of meters wide, and it's got to have depth, and everything's got to be able to move. There were lots of rules about which buildings could be represented. Some buildings are copyrighted. And I just remember you going away and coming up with all the answers, and sending these increasingly kind of bizarre photos of you in your kitchen, holding things, hanging things, and just finding a way to work. And the whole thing, I think, was independently strutted and supported, so it could be moved. And
so the map was one. It was like a generic kind of map that looked like it was slightly folded.
Yes, because it was for GPS in cars. It was
And then I think 5 different cities, and each city had 5 or 6 buildings, landmarks, and you needed to be able to move them around a little bit just to to fit with the different. That's it. It was to fit within the different sizes as well.
Yeah.
Because it was the big 48 sheets, and then it was smaller
That's
ones
right. We went
as
on
well.
billboards, didn't we?
Yeah.
So,
So landscape and portrait. That's something that happens quite often, actually. Got to be able to, and more now with Instagram stories, just a normal post, a reel. So you've got lots of
you've got to work across different formats. Yeah.
So,
but it was a real situation where, like I said, they had a vision, they didn't know how to achieve it, and you were the person that
come in and just
came in and made it happen.
I think when you say it like that, I kind of like, I don't recognise myself to be able to do that, but I suppose, I can. It's just something that is part of what I do. And I suppose it's because you just have to think about it flat first, because that, drawing a little thumbnail. Yeah. And then working from the flat to get it into the 3D.
So when you draw,
kind of
when you're in that first initial concept phase of drawing something, is your brain already going to how do I make this reality?
Yeah,
or do you sometimes draw things and then realise, I can't make
Well, that does happen. Or I kind of, sometimes I think I sort of shoot myself in the foot, because I'll draw something really elaborately, like in just flat layers, and then it will be signed off, and then I've got to like make it 3D, and sometimes I'm like, I didn't think about that bit of it, because sometimes when you take it from 2D to 3D, there are always areas or things that crop up that you didn't think of in the 2D that then again you have to problem solve. So there are times when I just think, I should have done it differently in the sketch. So I have to work a little bit harder to make it work. But I think in 3D. Yeah. Quite often, if I'm at the start of a job and I go to bed and I can't sleep, I'm lying there and my mind is thinking in 3D about how to make these layers work and what I can do to things to manipulate. I suppose that's what I'm doing, aren't I? Manipulating space and just also make something so it is versatile, like a theatre set. So you can move things in, you can move them out, you can change depth. So in a way, you've almost got lots of different scenarios within one piece of artwork that you've made. So some of the elements, they could make their own little vignette, and they can also work together as well. So it is definitely, and sometimes that doesn't happen until you actually start making it, because you start to think, I could do that and I could do that. So it's very much a process. It's I always think as well, it is a little bit like somebody working in Illustrator digitally, because that's layers essentially.
So it's a replication of a digital process.
But I'm just doing it the old school way, and the only thing is that in Illustrator or Photoshop, it's much easier to correct mistakes just like that. Whereas with me, there are certain things I can do.
But you've worked out a process.
And there's a caveat that you get to a certain stage and you can't change things then. But then, sometimes you can change things a little bit in Photoshop in post-production as well.
I'd like to give a little shout out to GF Smith.
Yes.
Because they make paper. They make very nice paper.
Yes.
And they have provided so much free paper to you over the years. Yeah. The amount of times that we've had a project in and we drop them an email and say, hey, we need some more paper. So they've been really, really good to us over the years.
No, they have, definitely. And I've still got, I've got lots of paper, and, a lot of times, a lot of my work definitely has GF Smith paper in it, because I've just got, drawers and drawers full. And I'd also like to give a shout out to James Cropper as well, who actually, they're a paper mill in Kendal.
Yes.
In Cumbria, but they make a lot of paper for GF Smith as well.
And you visited them, didn't you?
Yeah. And so I visited them on the Handsome Frank film.
Yes.
And then I visited them after that as well.
Now that film involved, so that was Powell who made that film, who we've got a history with, but they basically come up with quite obscure concepts and ideas to bring their films to life. But this one involved a vintage, was it a VW camper?
No,
van?
it was a Mercedes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And just so happened that on the day that we planned to do this all, it snowed really heavily.
I watched the film this morning.
But now
I forgot about the snow.
there's a shot in that film where the cameraman's at the back of the van and he's filming you driving. Now, that's not you, is it?
Oh, no. So it was the director of photography.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Owen. It was,
Angus?
I forgot. No, it wasn't Owen. It was, what was his
other
name?
one.
Yeah, he was so good.
Did he have to wear a wig?
No, because I had a hat on,
Okay.
and we had similar colour hair.
Because this is a really old van with a choke.
Okay.
He was my doppelganger. He was my
double.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for him though, because this van was massive. It's like a longer wheelbase.
Was it stick shift or?
Oh yeah,
And a
the
choke.
gear lever was like
Yeah.
It was really long. It's like it almost felt like a metre long. And it had no synchro mesh, so it was really hard to change gear.
I rewatched the film this morning. It's a lovely film, and if you're curious about how paper is made, there is a little section, very Wes Anderson inspired section in the middle of that film, where they have a quick tour of James Cropper and show you how paper is made.
Where the phrase "to come a cropper" comes from, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, to come a cropper, because people were losing their hands.
Oh,
the cropper
really?
was the machine, and people were losing their hands in these guillotines, and that was the phrase "to become a cropper."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I learned this week where daylight robbery comes from.
Oh right, where?
Well, they used to fill in the window tax.
Yeah.
But they used to do it to the staff quarters. So it was daylight robbery. They were stealing the daylight from the workers.
Wow.
There you go.
Two things I've learned, and it's not even 12 o'clock on a Monday.
It's an educational podcast.
Oh yeah.
I really did enjoy. It was a little bit of trepidation driving.
I
that
think
van.
I remember you calling me up in the morning saying, "I don't think I can drive the van."
But I did drive it.
Yes.
But not in like on flat.
We solved the problem.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Problem solver. It's good.
But it's really funny because a couple of people have said to me on Instagram after that, I thought that was your van and you lived in it.
Oh, right,
it's like, no, it had like a little wood burning stove in it.
Yeah,
and
beautiful, yeah.
But they'd hired it from somebody like near Newcastle. So the director of photography, I'm so sorry I've forgotten his name, he had to drive up from London to collect it, leave his car there and drive from the east coast over to Cumbria.
Right, okay.
But this was all their idea.
Yeah.
And this is what is amazing with PAL. I mean, they do a lot of music videos now, but you just go, okay, here's the illustrator. This is what they do. Come up with an idea. And we had no idea that they'd planned all of this. And then you get it back. And like the trip to the
Model Village.
The Model Village.
Yeah.
And then you get it back and you're just like, oh my.
Wow.
But they're very memorable.
And just really, really creative. Yeah. And they were so lovely to work with, I have to say.
You say in the film that when you went to visit a Model Village later in life, you realised that you remembered that you were kind of obsessed with them as a kid.
Absolutely.
And that is a theme that you've made a lot of small houses.
Yeah, and honestly, it took me a long time to make that connection. Family holidays when I was little, had an uncle that lived in Torquay, and there was this village near Torquay called Babbacombe Model Village. And I can remember being absolutely transfixed by
Obsessed by it.
Yeah, and you'd walk round it, and the landscaping was really lovely because like little conifer trees and little miniature kind of plants and things, and all these little tiny houses and people, and they had lights in and like boats, on ponds.
Isn't
and
there
things.
one down in the Cotswolds as well, a famous one? I'm sure I visited one down.
Oh, there is like there's a place called Snows Hill Manor,
right.
And there is a little one there that has slightly fallen into disrepair.
Okay.
But that's got like a little Cornish quayside. But it's beautiful, and it's sort of really lovely because it's fallen into a bit of disrepair as well. It's got like a romantic edge to it.
I wonder if Model Villages still stand up for the children of today. I need to take my kids
there's something about them because it's everything in miniature.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I always thought, I think when I was younger, I realised that I'd like to shrink down because everything...
Borrowers.
Yeah, and everything was like happy and perfect there.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I
so that was safety.
Yeah. And also I kind of think that I'd quite like people to want to shrink down and get into my artwork as well. Because I haven't done it for a long time, but went through a phase of making things in glass domes.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
And sort of like shrink into that kind of thing. And, it's
And
a
live in
happy,
that-
perfect world.
Yeah. Because you created something in a glass jar for one of our first exhibitions, I think.
Oh, that was the house,
Sweet.
wasn't
Yes,
it?
that was a house. Yeah,
Yeah.
a house that had come alive.
The wallpaper had come alive,
That's right.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've still actually got that's on my shelf.
There you go.
Because I had to buy quite a ornate, like square glass case. I think that's gone for something else. But the actual house, how many years ago was that?
Tweeterbrief
10,
must have
12?
been
2012, maybe 2013.
Well, the house is still standing.
There you go.
So
we've done a Tweeterbrief. What was it?
We did Instabrief as well.
Yeah.
Instabrief.
So we used social
Now we need
media
to do
to
TikTok a brief.
TikTok brief, Snapchat brief, yeah. But the premise was that we asked people originally on Twitter and then after on Instagram to send us briefs or ideas for briefs, and then each artist would pick one and create a bespoke piece of artwork. And somebody sent us this message that just said a house where the wallpaper's
it's come alive. Yeah. I remember her name. I think she was called Abby.
There you
It was
go.
a really good.
That's a
I
good
really
brief.
enjoyed
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
it was so simple as well.
It was a great show. That it was really fun.
Yeah, no, it was. But I think I didn't go to it because while I was making it, I broke my leg.
Oh God.
So I
That
had
was
to
then.
send it
Yeah.
up to you.
All
I
right,
remember
okay.
that, and that was.
I remember hunting around for a plinth for it to stand
Yeah.
on the day of the show.
Yeah, because it was quite.
It's quite hard to find a plinth at short notice.
Yeah, I know, and everybody, trust me to like, be awkward like that.
No, it was great. It was that was a really fun show.
Yeah, it was definitely.
And the other, whenever I think about your houses, you did the beautiful counting book.
Yeah.
Which actually my daughter used to learn to count.
Did she?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
nice. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I loved doing that actually. That was really...
Is that your only book?
No, I did another one after that as well. It's called A Walk Through the Woods.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
But yeah, the counting book was really nice because I came up with the idea and took it to the publishers.
To a publisher, yeah. And would you like to do more books?
I'm not sure. I think they're very, very time consuming.
Yeah.
Labour of love, as I
A
like to call them.
complete labour of love, yeah. And it was something that I definitely it was a tick on my list kind of thing.
Published author.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that. And I still get messages sometimes from people on Instagram saying, "Oh, I've just bought this book for my child," or I've bought it as a present for a child. So yeah, it's still out there. I think the Walk Through the Woods got a reprint in America, but I think the counting book it was never reprinted. So
Okay.
it's probably a rarity now.
Yeah, I think you signed my copy.
Oh, did I?
yeah,
Oh, well, there you
probably
go.
worth something. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and we've done this a couple of times over the years, is animating your work.
Yeah.
The two memorable ones I could think of are the McDonald's ad that you
Yes.
did, which was a Dutch.
That was with Pal
That was
as
with
well.
Pal,
That was
yeah.
my first work with Pal.
And was that was a Dutch
Yeah.
television advert?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah. That was great.
with
I loved doing that.
puppeteers
Yeah,
and-
I mean, that
So
was full
that was
on.
elaborate, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah.
really elaborate, yeah, because again, that was, I think I worked initially with the design agency and then we got Pal on board
Yeah.
and then they obviously come with their ideas. So it's very much it's collaborative and I think a lot of my work is quite collaborative.
But everything was done in camera.
Yeah. And it was the same, actually, it was the same director of photography who was my doppelganger as well.
Oh, your stunt double?
Yeah. And,
I think it always reminds me of a bit of a, like a Punch and Judy show with all the sort of
yeah.
moving elements within that frame.
Yeah.
I mean, way more elaborate than that, and without any jokes. But
So I made these puppets, but then I worked with the puppeteers because they kind of guided me how to make them a little bit as well. And then we had like a table with slots built.
Yeah.
So we could slot in the scenery and then move it around. And then the two puppeteers got they were like, they got into the table and like appeared
Wow,
in the
okay.
middle of the table.
And the camera was moving the whole time.
Yeah, the
as
camera
well.
was on a track.
This was on a track, yeah.
Yeah,
There was a
I mean, it
lot
was
of moving parts.
Yeah, and there was like a focus puller and somebody that was timing everything. It was.
But that's
full
one of
on.
those projects where it kind of crosses over into sort of theatre production.
Yeah, it was very much, because this table that we had made was like a little theatre set, really. Yeah, and there's no way I could have produced that on my own. I needed all these other people.
There was a lot of people involved in that.
Yeah.
I think we have a behind the scenes post somewhere, so we'll put a link to
And
to
I
that.
think actually I've got a photograph of either me or one of the puppeteers in the middle. So you've got the scene, and then there's two hands like
Nice.
coming out
Coming
the
out.
top of the scene.
And then the other one I always think of is the Hogarden ones, which
Yes.
were really
Oh,
lovely.
Shout out to Jonathan Beer.
Yes, good old Jonathan.
I miss Jonathan.
So Jonathan is
Jonathan Beer is an amazing photographer.
yes, he worked with a lot over the
Yeah,
years.
and we were a really good team.
And he had the studio in his.
in his garage.
Garage.
Yeah, but he was such a talented photographer, and his lighting, his technical mind was amazing, and he was again a problem solver. And we did some really great work together. And
He's still alive, by the way.
oh gosh, yeah, he's still alive.
He's gone and
Yeah.
he works somewhere else now.
Yeah,
as a full-time.
a full-time photographer. And to be fair, he's taken his talent and he's using it. And I do sometimes. I think about him and think, I really miss him. But I'm really pleased that he's gone on to bigger and better things.
What's been really
basically.
telling on projects is when we've brought in a photographer who can just bring out all those little details, all that texture. There's been one or two photographers that we've worked with. I mean, all right, they were still great, but afterwards you'd look at the photograph and it would just not look like paper.
No,
it wouldn't
it-
look handmade. And I think that's the thing that Jonathan and some other photographers we've worked with, is that you see that photograph and it is like, oh wow, that is a paper model that's been really brought to life.
He really understood.
Yeah, that was the difference.
And he lived 6-7 miles away from
Yeah.
me as well.
I
So-
do remember, I can't remember which client it was, but they were going to fly over from America for this shoot because they
Really?
wanted to be there.
Oh,
And Jonathan was always like, no clients, because it was
Yeah.
his,
Well, you
it
had
was
to
his
walk through
garage.
his kitchen to get his
Yeah.
family home to get into the.
And to be honest, I don't think that the clients would have minded. But
no,
yeah, it was
I think
just,
he was very aware of that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people did. I remember when we did the thing for Leon.
Yes.
They
Oh, the
came.
coffee campaign.
Yeah,
That was
and-
really
yeah,
lovely.
that was. I loved doing that, and so they came, and also with the stamps for Royal Mail. They came as
You've
well.
had some good clients.
Yeah.
We've name dropped some good clients here today.
What was the coach company?
Oh, Greyhound.
Greyhound.
That was
Because
the
that's what I was
yeah.
going to say. From the Audi one, so you did the London skyline. They saw that, and then they wanted all of these cities in America that you created them, the kind of skyline. But we kind of started with the main ones, and then the list got further. You got further down the list, and it was like there was just nothing to distinguish this city. It was just sort of a generic rectangle
Yeah.
for a building.
But this is the
Yeah.
problem Matt Murphy had with Adele's US tour. So she was playing some towns that had no significant landmarks.
Oh yeah, I think
for-
I remember him saying
for
about
the
that in the
posters,
podcast. Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
use artistic license.
Yeah.
and search for something to put in. Yeah, and I think and also you did mention before about the fact that some buildings are copyrighted.
Yes,
so
you have to be careful with that.
I think did Paul Thirlby? He had problems
with
with
Paris.
Yeah, and was London buses as well. I think is a thing.
I know
isn't it?
I think we might have said this on the podcast before, but you are allowed to draw or portray the Eiffel Tower. That's fine because that's not copyrighted because of the age of the structure.
Yeah.
But the lights on it are copyrighted.
Oh, really?
So you can't
Do it in
can't-
daylight.
And you're right.
You can't
The
draw it at
new
night.
London bus,
The Thomas Heatherwick one.
Yes,
yeah.
that is also copyright. The only time we were allowed to represent it sort of accurately was when we worked with TfL.
Right, yeah, because that's part and parcel of it, isn't it?
There you
Yeah.
go.
Because yeah, actually, Jonathan and I did a TFL post. You put it on the stories this morning.
Yes.
I'd completely forgotten that I'd done that one as well. That was a lovely
Well,
job.
just another big client.
Wow,
It's easy
I know.
to forget
God,
when you've got
just like,
so many.
so flippant. Sorry.
So talking all these incredible products, great clients. What's the best project you had to say no to?
Gosh.
And can we talk about it? I'm not even
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just trying to think. There's definitely ones that. There are some that I can't remember what they are, but I've been knee deep in another one, and then a project's come, and there was one recently.
Two copyrighted buses came along at once.
Yeah, there are. Oh, my memory is gone, but yeah, there are definitely some, and you're like, oh,
What's still on
there it goes.
what's still on the kind of the dream, the wish list?
See, I would love to do. I'd like to do more book covers.
Yeah.
But this is what everybody always says, but I really like the New Yorker magazine. I'd love
Yeah,
to
of
do a
course.
cover,
Yeah.
but yeah, doesn't everyone want to do that?
I mean, I think it's a real bucket list kind of
Yeah.
benchmark job, isn't it, for an
Yeah.
illustrator to be on the New Yorker?
Definitely. And there's a lot of. Sometimes I see not necessarily other paper artists who have worked with the client that I'd like to, but sometimes you see a job and you're like, oh God, I wish I'd have done that, or I got the chance to do that,
Yeah.
because they are definitely bucket list jobs for
Yeah.
sure.
And
But-
do you find, because I think over the years we've seen paper come and go as a trend,
Yeah.
and it certainly has peaks and troughs.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm not going to lie to you, these last few months, they've been quite difficult because I haven't had as much work. And every time that happens, I think, oh, has it gone now?
But it always
has it
comes
gone?
back.
Yeah.
But that's just what.
So we've got a
think-
briefing call tomorrow on something.
Yeah, that's true. So, and then when they come, it's like 2 London buses, and
Yeah,
they.
yeah.
But that's just the way it goes. But yeah, I sometimes think, do I need to just switch it up a little bit? Still, obviously using paper, but just.
I mean, I feel that you have gone through different phases, and
Yeah.
there's certainly been there's styles within
Yeah.
the medium.
Yeah, and sometimes I do think with my work, oh, well, why isn't it just done in CGI? So I try and maybe add a bit more texture. So I kind of I try and put like painted and textured paper in there as
Yeah.
well, and just
I think
gently put some things in there.
I mean, this is a big conversation about AI and where it's all going. I do hope that the human touch will become more valued.
Yeah.
When it's obvious, and I think in your work it is there.
And I think, like I've mentioned before, there are specific things where something like, my style, my kind of work does fit for a certain client as well, because it is that handmade. You can still see the touch of a hand, i.e., when you cut paper with a scalpel blade, you can kind of see the cuts.
Yeah.
And I used to think, oh no, I need to just get rid of that in Photoshop. But now I'm learning that imperfection is okay.
Yeah,
it's taken me a
absolutely.
long time.
Yeah.
And in this world of AI, lean into the imperfections of
Yeah,
something handmade
yeah.
a little
Show
bit.
people that
yeah,
it's-
it doesn't
it's been
have to
made
be
by a human.
perfect. I think for a long time, I was thinking, no, I've got to get rid of all the blemishes in the paper, everything, anything that makes it look like it's handmade. But that defeats the whole object.
Painters that we work with have said exactly the same
Yeah.
thing. The sort of splats of paint. And
Yeah,
stuff like
but that is the personality
Yeah,
of it.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm just, after 15, 17 years, I'm starting to, I can sit with that now
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit more, and I can
Plus, it means
live
you don't
with
have
it.
to use Photoshop.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I do use it, and as you know, I
Yeah,
do.
well,
I
you've-
have done a bit of photography
Over
now.
the years we've worked together, we've learnt photography together.
Yeah, well, you have been. Yeah, you've been really helpful.
There's been a lot of times where Helen would sort of send me a photograph that she'd done at home, and then I would sort of say, all right, you need to change your f-stop to this and maybe turn your light a little bit that way.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But it's, again, that's just a good sort of problem solving.
Oh yeah,
thing.
and you were like my quality control as well.
Well, yeah.
And sometimes I'd
rigorous.
really worry that it was like slightly out of focus, and you did actually. You gave me a sort of like a recommendations for a camera,
Yeah.
a body, and then a lens and a tripod.
For a while,
and,
it's been a love-hate relationship.
oh yeah, I still get the fear. I
Yeah.
absolutely get the fear because I have started to do a bit more photography.
But studio photography is really,
It's
really
so
hard.
difficult. I do it in my
a
garage.
science.
And it's
And-
it's a full time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember on that Audi shoot, the guy sort of said, he just turned one of the pieces of paper a couple of degrees to show how it goes from light to dark,
Yeah.
and it's the amount of light that's reflecting off that piece of paper. And in my head, I was just like, wow, like that's. It's just so clever.
It is really, yeah, and I think by osmosis, I've imbibed that from photographers and definitely from Jonathan.
Yeah,
Beer.
well, it's like a lot of models go on to be photographers because they've just spent so much time in a studio.
Yeah.
That again,
They
through
just pick it
osmosis,
up.
they learn how to do it all. Yeah.
And it is just like you say, those little nuances of just turning things and or blocking off a bit of light as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Flagging?
that's the
Flagging.
technical, yeah.
Oh yes.
But mine is very Heath Robinson, and yeah, it's in the garage, and there's all like stuff around.
We can add photographer then, as
Well-
and retoucher to your list.
Well,
so you asked at the beginning, are you an illustrator? I usually, I think I refer to you as a papercraft
yeah.
technician or engineer or.
Oh no! See, an engine. No, I'm definitely
But then
not an engineer.
I heard something the other day. So spacecraft companies, they were basically putting out adverts for jobs for engineers, and the people they were getting back weren't right. So they went on things like Etsy, and they just found what they were looking for is people who could make things with their hands, and they went down a recruitment drive down that route.
Oh, that's clever.
And there's all these just craft people now working in the space
and
industry.
also, I suppose it's sort of like combining
Yeah.
skills and
So there's still time
yeah.
for another career.
Well, oh my word!
Mission to Mars.
Well, actually, Jonathan and I did do an animation about
You
the
did,
moon
yeah,
landing.
the moon landing.
Oh,
And
yeah,
we did that off of our own back,
Yeah.
and I think that is one of my most favourite.
We should absolutely link to
I
that
love
with the
that,
podcast post.
and he was so good with that because he did the soundtrack. Because you can get NASA have got like open source website where you can go and take audio and things like that. So
Oh,
we've
incredible.
actually got
Yeah.
the real audio of it as well. And
From the landing.
Yeah, and he like integrated all of that, and he learnt a new program to be able to put it all together.
Oh,
but he could
fantastic.
just
Yeah.
apply himself, and that I loved doing that,
We'll
and we were
have to share
both
that again.
really proud of that one. I know. So, but yeah, it's funny you saying like a new career. When we were at the Handsome Frank Christmas party, I was talking to Paul Thirlby and Emma Kelly because I think we're like the
OGs.
yeah, we're the and sort of talking about retiring. Because
Wow, you
get
can't
into
retire,
Well, I
Helen.
know,
Is
but
this
I'm
some
official announcement.
no.
Is this what you've come here for?
No. But I just think I never will retire.
I don't think artists retire.
No.
I'm hoping they don't.
No, it's just you just kind of carry on, and you just I might not always be a commercial art, but I will always be making
You'll always be
things because
making
that's
stuff.
just what
And
I do.
there will always be a market for
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it was just
100% yours is the best Christmas card I get every year. It's an actual
oh yeah.
physical
Oh,
mini
yeah.
3D.
Well, I have a model of my dog Hendrix,
Oh, yeah.
sausage dog, that comes out every
I
Christmas.
just see it with a hat and a little
with,
scarf.
with a hat and scarf.
Yeah,
that-
because I made some of Earl, our R.I.P. Earl,
Oh, bless Earl.
years ago.
Your dog?
With my dog, yeah, my chocolate Labrador. And I've still got people that I know that he comes out every year.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's part of the Christmas decorations
and he used to
now.
get a hat every year. On
Oh
his
yeah,
birthday,
hat,
didn't he?
and then like a bow tie. Oh yeah, the hats
paper
got more
hats.
and more elaborate, and he got more and more fed up with me. It's just like, oh, she's here again. She's back. What does she want me to do this time?
A reluctant model.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think we've covered a lot. I
Yeah,
think
we
we've covered
have.
nearly everything. We did have one question from Stuart,
Oh.
who's not here
Oh,
today.
hi Stu.
But Stuart was wondering if you're really bad at the game rock, paper, scissors, because you always go for paper.
Yeah. But no, the thing is though, no, you see, I necessarily wouldn't. Yeah. I was watching something on the telly the other day. Oh, I think it was Squid Game.
Yes.
But it was like the TV.
Oh, the game. Yeah, I've not seen that yet. I've seen the
and
series.
I've not seen it at all. I watch all of these kind of things vicariously through Gogglebox, and they had like the last two contestants.
Yeah.
And that came down to rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors.
And it really made me start to think about what you would do.
Your tactics.
You've got to think tactics.
Paper would maybe
Paper's
be too
quite
obvious.
good though, because paper could cover stone.
Yeah, I mean...
So that's good. But then if you've got paper and then there's a scissor, you know what I mean? So it's luck of the draw, isn't it, really?
Beauty of the game.
I mean, I love paper, but it wouldn't always necessarily be paper. So there you go, Stu. I hope that answered your question.
I have one more question. What's worse, a paper cut or a scalpel?
Oh, well, a paper cut stings.
Between the fingers. Oh.
But a scalpel cut is worse because a scalpel is used for cutting skin. You don't always know that you've done it until there's there's like a delay between the cut and when the blood comes.
Yeah. Have you ever ended up in A&E from a scalpel cut?
No, but it was actually when I was working.
You've not come a cropper,
John. If you were a paper craft person, you'd be in A&E
I've got
every
a
week.
massive selection of plasters very close to me. I'm really good at doing it one-handed, and there was one time I was working late on a Saturday night, early Sunday morning. I think it was Molten Brown, and I dropped the scalpel. It was sort of springtime, and I had just sandals on, and I dropped the scalpel blade first into my foot, narrowly missing a vein.
Oh God!
Wow!
And it didn't go on the vein, luckily, but there was a lot of blood. And Andrew was watching a film.
This is your partner, Andrew.
Partner Andrew in the living room, and I went running into the living room with blood everywhere, and he was watching a film, but I think he'd fallen asleep, and he was suddenly. But luckily, our next door neighbour was a surgeon.
Oh,
and
right.
and they were still up as well, because they were watching Netflix too. And he came round and patched me up at 1:45 in the morning.
Okay, so if we're going to leave the next generation with one piece of advice, it's if you're a paper artist,
carry plasters.
Carry plasters and don't wear sandals.
No. And then after that, I started wearing wellies.
Yeah, metal Crocs.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, Helen, thank you so much for coming in. I don't know why we didn't do this years ago.
I know it was. I was a little bit woke up this morning with a bit of trepidation, but it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming to see us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And if you'd like to know more about Handsome Frank and our artists, check out our website, handsomefrank.com.
Thanks very much for listening.
Handsome Frank. Handsome Frank. Handsome Frank.